listeners, and welcome to another episode of Extra Extra. It's all about whiskey. I'm your host, Jason Johnston Yellen. And I'm pleasured. I don't think that's how you say that.
I think I was
suggesting that I'm pleased, but more than that, I feel pleasure to be in your company, Joshua Hatton.
I'm pleasuring you right now with my company.
It's true. That's the most awkward part of this exchange, is you are pleasuring me right now with your company. Anyway, it's not One Nation Under Whiskey. Get it together.
All right.
So, in Extra Extra, Joshua and I come together and we bring a news story, often whiskey focused, to the attention of the other. We'll read it in the first half of the episode, we riff on it in the second half of the episode, and we try to get out of here in a tight 30 to 35 minutes. And we're mostly. Mostly. The last episode went a little bit longer, but two excellent topics to be discussing.
Yeah, and most of them, I think we hug that 35-minute spot more often than not.
Do you give it pleasure, that 35-minute spot?
Not that long.
So this week, it's funny because we sometimes we mix it up a little bit. But I feel like we mix it up a little bit more than we actually stick to the quote-unquote formal script. And so I'll just say this week's episode is going to be one of those episodes where we have seen a list and we have wanted to comment upon said list.
Yes.
So we find ourselves on the doorstep of the holiday season, the gift-giving season. Depending how COVID looks in your neck of the woods, you might be going out to visit people, you might be taking a bottle of whiskey to somebody's house to say thank you for hosting or wishing you the best of the season. And this list gives us both bottles for consideration and a jumping off point for us to offer our own riff.
Yeah.
So today's episode, instead of being segmented into a reading followed by a riffing, we're going to do what we sometimes do when presented with a list, which is riff as we go along and see if we can keep this to some semblance of 35 hugged minutes.
I think we can keep it well below 2 hours.
I love your optimism. Regular listeners of One Nation Under Whiskey are wondering why we don't always have that level of optimism. Sometimes we like to stretch our legs into an episode. So, Joshua, today's article comes from the Robb Report. The title is From the Macallan to WhistlePig, 21 Superb Whiskies to Gift This Holiday Season. And then rather dangerously, it has a sub-headline, Get Them What They Really Want, which had me riffing on the Spice Girls, which was neither pretty nor clever.
But entertaining nonetheless.
The list comes from November 16 of 2021, and the author is Richard Carlton Hacker. Which makes me think a whole host of things.
Yeah, Fresh Prince. He's into computers.
Richard III by Shakespeare.
Right. Richard Three Names. It's look at that. It's great. It's great. Well, let's see what Richard has to say. Do you want to take us?
So to be clear, as we start here, we're not going to cover all 21 whiskies. We're not going to read all 21 paragraphs about all 21 whiskies. We're going to dip in and out of this list, stopping to smell the whiskey as time allows and as we feel like we have interest. But here's the intro from our good friend, Richard Carlton Hacker. Not even reading that. I now have that name committed to memory.
I love it. It's a great name. Strong name.
It's been one hell of a sleigh ride from last year's holiday season to this one. But we made it. Along the way, one of the best friends we've had is whiskey. Throughout the year, we've been sampling the new, relying on the old, and marvelling at the myriad of options available, from smoky single malts to small batch bourbons, to barrel-proof ryes, to Japanese newcomers. Now it's time to spread the cheer. So we're sharing our favourite bottles that we think will make outstanding gifts for the whiskey or whiskey. First one with an E, second one without an E. Lover in your life. Here are, if you want to read the full article for yourself, 21 bottles of the best whiskey, bourbon and rye to give away this holiday season. And then in italics.
Can I just pause you really quickly? I need to say that single paragraph opener was so well written and it drew me in. That makes me want to read each and every one. I really enjoyed his style.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Richard Carlton Hacker.
So continue. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. The comment in italics. The editors of Robb Report scour the globe and the internet for the best of the best and only endorse products we love and think you'll love too. If you purchase a product or service through a link in this story, we may receive a small commission.
There you go. Little disclaimer.
Jason and Joshua, however, never receive a small commission for anything you purchase because we are numpties. So I'm scrolling down here. I'm skipping through the first four in the interest of time. Not I think there's anything wrong with the first four, but I wanted to bring to your attention, Joshua, Benriach Smoke Season Single Malt. Although Speyside single malts aren't noted for being overly peaty, back in the 19th century, it was one of the hallmarks of Scottish whisky. Benriach revived this mainland tradition about 50 years ago, and this year it has reached a crescendo with their peatiest whisky to date, thanks to master blender, here we go, Rachel Barry's use of intensely peated malt and using first fill bourbon barrels combined with a high proportion of charred and toasted American virgin oak casks for aging. The Highland peat delivers an intensely smoky and sweet flavour, intermingled with Benriach's stone fruit notes. And the Robb Report suggests that's a $58 bottle. As we always say, not only are you listening across the United States, you're listening around the globe. So we stand by no pricing that we give here, but it lets you know it's ballpark in the 60s. It's not a triple digit, it's not a $20, such a thing doesn't exist, but it gives you a ballpark of where that's at. So what do you think in hearing this, Joshua? Benriach Smoke Season. Have you seen it out in the wild? Have you had a chance to taste it? Any of the places you've been pouring?
I haven't seen it. I have seen, well, let me put it this way. This Benriach, along with all of the others, now have new packaging. And I'm just getting used to the packaging. So I've seen Benriachs on the shelves, but to be honest, I haven't been paying too much attention to that. Benriach for me, the things that really shone for me was when they do their annual single cask releases. And before people really knew about them, there were some phenomenal finds, some phenomenal single casts there. Was it their 12-year-old? Is it 10 or 12? I can't remember now, but it's a bottle I've bought twice before. But the older packaging, back when they had the myriad of colors with all of their labels.
Well, for me, it was always the Latin wording, and it was, fanciful Latin wording, where it was, it sounded like a Harry Potter spell. Luminos and shit like that. So
like Septicus, Sepultura.
I do like Richard's closing sentence on this one, though. The Highland peat delivers an intensely smoky and sweet flavour, intermingled with Benriach's stone fruit notes. I haven't tasted it, but that sentence makes sense to me based on what I know about Benriach spirit and Benriach peated spirit. And I love the cask maturation that's gone on in here as well.
Yeah, and, we've bottled a Benriach, and it was a peated whiskey. Their whiskeys are really nice, be they peated or not. So I have no doubt. What was it, $75?
58, close.
$58. That's a great price.
Definitely doing them a disservice. Was that $225? Am I remembering that correctly?
Is that a $1,300 bottle? No, that sounds good.
There is nothing that talks about the strength of it, and when I zoom in on the image, I'm not getting to see an ABV either. So
I hate to say it, it may be 43. They started dropping things to 43 and doing some chill filtration, and but I could be wrong. Could be wrong.
So here's a fun one. I like the image for this one, which is why I wanted to bring it up to you on a podcast. Johnnie Walker, Year of the Tiger.
Mm-hmm.
Not since 2010 has the Chinese Year of the Tiger made its appearance, prowling the Chinese zodiac calendar from February 1, 2022 until January 31, 2023. This winged symbol of strength and courage high in the clouds above a booming metropolis is personified by Johnnie Walker's latest Blue Label limited edition. With a striking blue and gold design by artist Shang Zhang, the bottle and box portend a celebratory whiskey composed of single malts as old as 60 years, many of which are from no longer existing quote-unquote ghost distilleries. In fact, only 1 in 10,000 casks make the grade for this exceptional blended scotch. Robb Report's price by now, $269.
I can tell you right now, I am a millimeter away from buying this bottle.
Why is that?
Well, I need to dig a little deeper because he's saying this is comprised of single malt as old as 60 years. He doesn't mention grain. And so I'm starting to think, is this a pure malt, or a blended malt, right? That's the proper nomenclature. Is this a blended malt? I like Johnnie Walker. I think Johnnie Walker Gold, the 18-year-old, is a fine little whiskey. I think its base is Klein Leash, right? So it has that honeyed, waxy kind of thing going on. The green label is always a nice little drinker. And I'm normally not a sucker for packaging, but the bottle looks gorgeous, right? It
it's
really
a ton
is.
of fun, isn't it?
Yeah. And listen, with whiskeys potentially as old as 60 years, I'm sure it's an eyedropper full. I'm not going to buy this hook, line, and sinker, but that's intriguing, and it makes me think. There's younger whiskeys, lesser whiskeys that I may have paid more for. So I think this may be good. Now, granted, it's probably 40%. It's probably chill filtered. There's probably color in it, all that, blah, 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 blah. But I am tempted.
But I like the fact that you're throwing in here, if somebody showed up at your house for a COVID-safe holiday party and they said, "Thanks for hosting, Joshua. Here is the Chinese Year of the Tiger, Johnnie Walker Blue," you would say, "Thank you very much," and twice on Sundays.
Oh, without a doubt. I think it'd be both generous and thoughtful. Yeah.
That's interesting. I'm glad I included this one. There is a little bit of the marketing fun with numbers going on.
Yeah.
You alluded to it a second ago with the potential eyedroppers worth of 60-year-old malts.
Yeah.
But then, in fact, we're dealing in facts here. Only 1 in 10,000 casks make the grade for this exceptional blended scotch. That's sketchy.
Yeah, how many distilleries does Diageo own? How many casks between them do they have in their store? It's and how many of them are of a certain age? So, yeah, you can do with numbers what you like.
You can tell a story.
Yes, exactly.
So this next bottle I want to include here because it it uses a word that you and I enjoy using in our own single cask nation tasting notes.
Writ large. Oh.
So it is not writ large.
Fresh bandages.
Well, this is really interesting. This is the Macallan, the Harmony Collection, inspired by rich cacao. C-A-C-A-O. Not cocoa, cacao.
C-A-C, is that? Oh, yeah, because it would be C-O-C-A-O would be cocoa.
You and I go back and forth on our tasting notes and the spelling making a difference to what it is you're tasting and me sometimes clarifying with you what's being said here. Or we were trying to say this thing over here, not that thing over there.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued by this. I'm also seeing in the edge of the photograph, it says natural colour. Matured in sherry seasoned oak casks, 44% ABV.
That's interesting. That is a cigar malt ABV right there.
Here we go. So here comes Richard with his paragraph. Everyone talks about sustainability, but Macallan has now dedicated a whiskey to it. In fact, this is the first limited edition in an innovative new series of single malts that will see the brand progress towards even more sustainable packaging. In this case, the bottle labels in the recyclable and biodegradable presentation outer box are made from organic cacao shells, while the box ribbon is made from 81% virgin wood pulp. I thought we'd have heard more about the whiskey by this point, but let's continue. To create the whiskey itself,
there you go.
Macallan whiskey maker Polly Logan embarked to Girona, Spain, where she collaborated with renowned pastry chef Jordi Roca of El Cellar de Can Roca.
Good gosh, I apologize to every person of Spanish origin for Jason.
That's a Spaniard who has spent a lot of time around chip shops in Glasgow, specifically the east side of Glasgow, not the south side of Glasgow, the east side of Glasgow. And things have happened to their accent in that time. But anyway, Polly was visiting his chocolate factory, Casa Cacao, while also working with chocolatier Damien Alsop. Combining European sherry and American oak casks, Logan created a whiskey reminiscent of chocolate fondant, honey and oak, perfect for pairing with chocolate. Now, the price on this, non-age statement, 44%, part of the Harmony Collection, is $287.
So two things here. Initially, when the initial title says the Macallan Harmony Collection Rich Cacao, I thought that rich cacao, I thought that was a person. So it was nice to get...
Sup, Rich?
Oh, rich cacao, you know. He's of the Guilford cacaos. Here's my problem. It's probably a delicious little whiskey. It's likely doesn't drink like a nearly $300 bottle. Maybe it does. That's debatable. My big problem is this will be a gift to someone. Oh, you know what? As I say this, if this is for buying for someone else, I think a person receiving a Macallan bottle may treat a Macallan bottle differently than someone who purchases Macallan for themselves. Right? We talked about this in a previous episode, where an unfortunate thing about Macallan is that the bottles never get opened. Right? They're put into auction, or they're put on a shelf and they collect dust because they're pretty. But I wonder if you're buying someone a Macallan, you don't necessarily know what they like. Maybe they don't know what it is, or they know the name Macallan, so they know it's going to be fancy. But I wonder if this would actually get opened by a gift receiver more than it would by a Macallan purchaser.
I think that's a fine question to be asking. I I wonder more along the lines of, if you're pitching this so heavily as inspired by rich cacao, and then you've got the graphic on the box that talks about cinnamon and vanilla and dates and honey on the way to dark chocolate, and dark chocolate is the destination, at 44%, which is likely chill filtered, I wonder if there's a risk of losing some of that wonderful texture that you've got your drinker thinking about, and then to have the price tag on top of that. And so I think, and again, I think you and I have talked about this previously, I think when it comes to Macallan, you either buy it or you don't. Don't step up and start complaining about the price of a Macallan. Buy it or don't. It always reminds me of the adage, if you have to ask the price of something in a shop, you can't afford it. And so don't go into a shop that doesn't have prices. I feel like for the Macallan, that's where they're like, a Macallan bottle is the price of a Macallan bottle. Buy it or don't.
Yeah.
But just to kind of explore what you're saying about even in being gifted here, even in not worrying about the price point, if you go so heavily down the flavour profile, do you deliver? And I'm curious to taste this and see if they deliver.
Well, I could be wrong here, but I think I may be correcting you. I know Macallan does not color the whiskey in any way. That, from my understanding, that's fairly well established, which makes me think they don't chill filter either, even when they bottle at 43. Again, I could be wrong, but neither of us are Macallan guys. I guess we should.
Nope.
We should know about things we are not a part of. Right? Like, should we be educated here?
There's lots of things I'm not a part of that I don't know anything about. The whiskey world is a big, big whiskey world, and I'm okay not knowing about certain corners of it. But let me bring us around to a corner that we do know about, and that our good friend Anthony Levinson definitely knows about. Next on the list is the Aberfeldy 18-year-old limited edition. Mm-hmm. And Richard writes, Dewar's Distillery Malt Master Stephanie McLeod, who we have spoken with on One Nation Under Whiskey,
Yes, we have.
made history when she became the first woman to be awarded Master Blender of the Year in the 2020 International Whiskey Competition. And she has made it again in 2021 with the distillery's just released flagship single malt that has spent 18 years in a combination of first fill, rechar, and refill casks. After that, the whiskey, with its signature honeyed fruit and nut-like notes, was finished for up to 5 months in Côte Rôtie French wine casks, which added a silky, sensuous raspberry, ligonberry, not to be misconstrued for loganberry. Ligonberries have a cranberry-like taste, and red currant texture to an already excellent whiskey. And suggested price here is $140 for an 18-year-old.
Firstly, Stephanie is so deserving of these awards. A very, very capable person, and she knows her stuff. You know I'm a fan of Aberfeldy, and, you know, was it earlier this year or was it late last year we released our 28-year-old for UK, Europe, Japan?
Yep.
And he was
the answer to that question.
Right?
Yep.
But what did we love about ours? It's that tropical, delicate tropical fruity quality mixed with chamomile teas, white teas. You know, it's a soft spirit but fruity. And I love that she put that whiskey in these, I'm going to slaughter the name, but the Côte Rôtie wine casks to give it these you know, berry-like fruit notes. I could see that spirit working in those casks in a really nice way.
Agreed, yeah. And it is one of those things, when you get to know that Dewar's single malt portfolio and you start to experience and taste. When I talk about experience, I'm thinking texture, but then also tasting what they're doing there, what Stephanie's looking to achieve there. They are distilleries that I'm willing to explore, to pick up, to seek out. And the way this is described, this 18-year-old, somewhere around $140, that sounds like a good addition to a shelf.
Yeah, I hope that it is at least 46% alcohol.
So in zooming in on the photo, it looked like 43.
Yeah, I clicked through to the website, and it takes you to Reserve Bar, and I was hoping the ABV would be listed, and in the description it just says bottle size 750 ml. So I guess we'll have to find out there.
Yeah, it's always frustrating. It's the same sometimes trying to buy online, and the store doesn't tell you the ABV, and you can't read it from a label. I'm like, I'm sitting on my couch or in my office. You got to give me all the information. And the ABV is part of all the information.
It's helpful.
Drives me bonkers. Don't know why people do that, Joshua. Mm-hmm. So I know you're a fan of the Aberfeldy distillery. This 18-year-old is attractive to you?
It is. I don't know why $140 makes me hesitate. Maybe it is because I don't know what the ABV is. If this were 46 or 48%, then I'd start to get intrigued. If it were at 43%, I probably wouldn't open my wallet.
I'm excited to see an age statement. It's nice to see that 18 front and centre after going through the price of the Macallan without it.
Yeah.
The Johnny Blue suggesting there's some stuff in here that's 60, you know? Like, that at least just says 18. You know, as much as we're having this back and forth about the ABV, we at least know how old it is.
No, I know, but it's interesting that the age statement seems important to you.
In this instance. If you're going to connect, if you're going to make it $140, I know what my $140 is getting. It's getting an 18-year-old. If you look to charge me $270 ballpark for a non-age statement Macallan that's based on rich cacao, well, we got a different proposition going on there.
So what about $240 for a 5-year-old Octomore?
Sure.
Right? It becomes different.
You know me.
It's
you know me. I don't care about age. I don't care what the number is.
You just want
Sometimes
to see
it's nice to see one, though,
yeah.
right? Mm. You at least know what the proposition is. Mm-hmm. So, speaking of age statements, and to throw a bone to our friends in the bourbon community, after our last episode, which was so much fun to cover, I received a number of messages from different bourbon people saying it wasn't me. when that episode went on to, some bourbon people were a little bit rude to some, retailers, and it wasn't me. Just to clear my name. Well, nobody said it was you. Just to clear my name. Okay. So for our friends in the bourbon community, and I love this recommendation. There's a reason we're talking about it. Eagle Rare 10-year-old bourbon. Mm-hmm. And here's Richard, the author. It seems that every bourbon Buffalo Trace Distillery puts out becomes collectible. Their twice-a-year Stag Junior is currently sold out, although a new 18th edition is coming before the end of this year. Their recently released experimental collection Baijiu-style spirit is so limited, the 375ml bottles can't even be tracked down on e-commerce sites. And of course, their Pappy Van Winkle 23-year-old is legendary. But there are still a few gems from this distillery that can be found, one of which is Eagle Rare 10-year-old. It's a bargain if you can score a bottle with its easy sipping notes of candied almonds, orange peel, and leather. Available for around $45 a bottle. I love the fact that in this world where we talk about bourbon allocations and bourbon secondary market and people queuing at stores to get lottery tickets to go in and buy one bottle of something they don't even know what it is yet, but they're going to buy it when they get to the register no matter what. We'd hear stories about maybe mistreating some sales reps and some store managers.
It wasn't me.
To just take a breath and say, you know, if you like bourbon, there's a really good 10-year-old you can get for $45.
Yeah,
I love this recommendation.
I love it too. I love that there's an age statement on there. It's less that it tells me how long it's been in the cask, and more simply that it's retained its age statement, where whiskeys like Elijah Craig lost its 12-year-old, right? And then I think it went from a 12-year-old to an 8 to 12-year-old or something like that, and then this statement just simply went away.
Or even, as to speak to that, in lieu of an age statement, you have the number such and such recipe, you know, where that number gets prominence on a label.
Yeah.
I've never, ever been a fan of that practice. And I know it's a storied tradition in American labeling for bourbon, but I've never been comfortable with that. And to see this nice 10-year, you can set your watch to that. A good dad expression. You can set your watch to that, Joshua Hatton.
The only thing that I will say is, if you're looking to buy someone you know who loves bourbon, a bottle of Eagle Rare 10-year-old, know that this bourbon, I think, is really on the sweeter side. You really have to have a sweet tooth to enjoy this one. I like this a lot, but I can't have too much of it. It's just too sweet.
It's funny you say that, because sweet bourbons aren't really in my wheelhouse. I like high rye bourbons, but Eagle Rare was one of the first bourbons that I really looked at and said, that's a drinker. I could really get behind that.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Can I make an additional recommendation, just since we're on bourbon right now?
Yeah, sure.
At this time of year, it happens all through the year, you know, people have birthdays coming up, or a friend did them a favor, what have you. But friends text me and they say, what can I get at the local liquor store for a friend who did me a solid or has a birthday, they love bourbon, here's my budget. And they put me something like $50, $60, right? What can I get for that? And we know bourbon's gone a little bit nuts. We know the pricing's gone a little bit nuts, so on and so forth. I'm forever sending people out for Wild Turkey single barrel.
Yeah.
The fact you can pick up a single barrel from the distillery,
the 10-year-old.
I think for us local, are we maybe looking at $60 for that, give or take? Yeah,
somewhere around there. 55, 60.
Again, right? If you're losing your mind around bourbon and you're thinking, wow, this has just gotten out of control, there's still just lovely bottles sitting on shelves that still make a big statement. That's what I like about this Eagle Rare. That's what I like about the Wild Turkey single barrel.
Don't shout too loud about that, because it's just going to be the next one that people glom onto, and then we won't find
Jason
it anymore.
And Joshua do not receive a commission if you purchase according to their recommendations. Very quickly, is there a bourbon? Like, if I know you are in the same scenario as me, where people are reaching out asking for recs, is there a go-to, a price point, a statement that you recommend?
Well, I have a bourbon that I would recommend. Actually, I have a rye that I want to recommend.
Right. Well, I did bourbon, you do rye.
Yeah, but I had a single malt that I wanted to recommend as well. Hold on one second.
Yeah, put your single malt away for the moment. Just give us your rye.
My rye, and I think I had you get a bottle of it. It's the Old Forester rye.
Got it right beside me. It is literally beside my elbow right now.
Pick that up, because my bottle must be downstairs. I put, downstairs in my kitchen, I have that array. That's my bottles for company. So what's going on with this one? Because
100 proof.
Yep.
You've got my attention.
Yep.
Rye in lovely big letters. Screw cap. Happy to get behind that. What's the price point on this? $20?
It's about 24. I think I got mine for $24.
Oh, that's
Right?
lovely.
50%
That's
alcohol. Really rich. It's rye, but it's not too spicy. A little bit of nuttiness, just a tiny bit of nuttiness in the back on that. I think that's one of the better ryes on the market.
Yeah, you show up at someone's house with this and you say, hey, thanks for having us over for dinner. You've spent $20-25 and you've just given them something brilliant.
Yeah, yeah. And at this point, it's not about the money. What you've done is, A, you've given them a gift, and B, you've given them a gift that's so good when they go to rebuy it, they're going to be saving money because it's one of the best deals on the shelf.
Yeah. That was lovely. I just took a little swig of that straight from the bottle just to get the taste in my mouth. And I will say, hashtag, please drink straight from the bottle responsibly.
Yeah.
In the interest of time here, Joshua, I'm going to go through just maybe a couple more. There are some others on this list I would like to talk about, but in the interest of time, let's do a couple, and then I want to hear this single malt recommendation that you want to make.
We're going to go an hour with this episode, and I'm okay with that. Hopefully our listeners are okay with that too.
Here's a good one for you.
All right.
Courage and Conviction, American Single Malt Whiskey. And again, how much time have we spent talking about American single malt whiskey this year? So I'm glad to see this recommendation in the Robb Report as well. Mm-hmm. The phrase, have the courage of your convictions, originated in France, but it was also a favourite saying of the late Dr. George G. Moore, who founded the Virginia Distillery Company that produces this craft spirit. Consequently, it became the name of Dr. Moore's original whiskey, which he purposely spelled without an E as a tribute to the Scottish style of whiskey making. Still family owned, individual bottlings taken from the trio of casks used in creation of the flagship single malt whiskey, bourbon, sherry, and red wine, we'll say more about the red wine in a moment, are available. But we favour the original whiskey, which is composed of spirits aged in 50% ex-bourbon casks, 25% sherry casks, and 25% red wine casks. This double copper pot distilled spirit is bursting with spicy notes of fruit, cocoa, caramel, and butterscotch, with a smooth and creamy finish. Befitting its name, each bottle comes with a magnetically held Courage and Conviction medal that may be removed and carried as an inspirational pocket piece. Price, $80.
So this is interesting. In this spelling, it's cocoa. In the other spelling, it's cacao.
Cacao. They're two different things.
They are two different things. Okay, this is the conversation that you were talking about before that we've had many times. And okay.
Exactly.
All right, carry on. So you had mentioned we're going to talk about those red wine casks. I think I know what you're going to say.
Yes.
So why don't you go ahead and say it?
Yeah. So if you read any of the marketing by the Virginia Distillery Company, they talk about cuvee casks. Mm-hmm. And given that we're here in Virginia and they're an hour and 5 minutes from me, full disclosure, as of the recording of this episode, I was there 10 days ago, 11 days ago, tasting from the spirit run, tasting from the spirit receiver, tasting in the warehouse, having a wonderful, wonderful time. The cuvee casks in Virginia speak to that red wine lineage. Mm. But for those of us in whiskey circles more than wine circles, the cuvee casks are STR, shaved, toasted, recharred. So you've got the caramelization of the wine sugars within the oak staves, the color that brings, the flavors that brings to the table are phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So to hear bourbon, sherry, and red wine, I think it downplays what you're actually getting, where you're getting bourbon, sherry, and STR going on in there,
agreed.
which is a very different proposition. And I think the Courage and Conviction is well worth your money, and such a wonderful drinker, and so well put together. Now, the name missing here, we've talked about Rachel here, we've talked about Stephanie here, we've talked about Polly here with the Macallan, but a name missing from this paragraph is Amanda Beckwith, who's in charge of the maturation and the blending at Virginia Distillery Company. And her nose and her palate, I think, are beautifully demonstrated in this marriage of bourbon, sherry, and STR casks.
So who's your recipient here? Who are you targeting with this flavor profile as a gift receiver?
I think with any American single malt, you're looking to maybe introduce somebody to the existence of this. I don't think you walk into somebody's house, maybe unless you're here in Virginia. I don't know if you walk into somebody's house already knowing they're a Virginia Distillery Company fan. But I think if you go in to gift this bottle, you're planning on them becoming one when you leave.
Okay.
I think that's the delivery here. And I think, just like we've said with Westland over the years, Copperworks, Balcones, we're looking to turn people onto American single malt whiskey. You know, there's a little bit of the evangelical about us, right? Where we want to evangelize this area of American craft production.
100%.
And so that to me is kind of what I'm looking to deliver here, is hopefully I can be the first person to tell you about this distillery that I think you're going to become very partial to. And, you know, continuing the full disclosure, at the very beginning of next year, we are releasing our own single cask from the Virginia Distillery Company, which is a Spanish oak butt. And that does remarkable things, and the cocoa on that is turned up to 11. And so, good things are happening just over the mountain from me.
Yeah, that you wanting to read this particular one, given the fact that we're bottling one of their single casks, should come as no surprise. There's a reason we selected the cask, because the folks at VDC really know how to make whiskey, and they had Jim Swan help them on the maturation side. He knew what would be happening in their climate, and the result is really delicious whiskey. Let me just say one quick thing. I think it was on the Drammers Facebook page, and Yoni Miller had posted a picture that had one of these bottlings in it, one of the Courage and Conviction bottlings, and I commented saying, hey, their stuff is really good. And Sean Crane, I'm sure you recognize that name as a Nation member.
Absolutely. Yep.
And he was saying how, he had some Virginia Distillery Company whiskeys a few years back, and he didn't like them. But he's tried some new stuff, and his mind has changed, right? It really seems that they're coming into their own, and the liquid has definitely come into their own. So, yeah, it's exciting. I think this would make a great gift for someone.
Yeah. Scott Harris would sometimes talk about that at Catoctin Creek, which is an hour and 3/4 in the other direction for me. But, they're maybe 40 minutes outside of DC, and people came out and tried them way back in the beginning. They're 10 years old as well, just like us, just like Westland. And after that first very early impression, people would say, oh, Catoctin Creek's not on my radar. So much happens in 3 years with a distillery, 5 years with a distillery, a decade for a distillery to turn yourself off to them after one try. And so I love hearing Sean circling back on this one and saying, whatever was going on then is not going on now. Big fans of it. Yeah, I've tasted a lot. Hashtag humble brag. I've tasted a lot of things they call it the Cask House. Mm-hmm. Wonderful things are happening there. Absolutely. I wouldn't be championing the way I am if I didn't believe in them. You and I have had this going on for years and years now. If we're recommending it, it's worth your money. Because I don't want you to come back to either of us and say, I spent my money there. Well, it was a bit of a dud. No. If we're recommending it to you, it's because it's well worth your money.
And if you don't like it, that's your own fault.
I'll take it. Yeah, thanks. I'll take it. let us get out of here on one final recommendation from the Robb Report. And as is always the case, I didn't get through nearly as many bottles as I'd hoped to. But I loved the conversation along the way, and I wouldn't change anything. But I do recommend go to robbreport.com, look out for best whiskey holiday gifts, and give this a full read for yourself. We're getting out here with a very old friend. Okay. Very old friend. Okay. Laphroaig Sherry Oak Finish Single Malt with the 10 emblazoned right in the middle of it.
So this is interesting. The Laphroaig 10 is a very old friend. I have not had the 10 with a sherry finish.
Oh, I just meant Laphroaig Distillery is a very old friend.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, no, this is new. This is a new release.
Okay.
The salty, iodine, and seaweed characteristics of Laphroaig are a perfect match for the sweet essences of citrus and slightly salted Spanish Marcona almonds that emanate from Gonzalez Baez Alfonso Oloroso Seco Sherry.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
So it is a welcome treat for fans of this ultra-smoky Islay single malt to find that Laphroaig distillery manager John Campbell has selected certain casks, parentheses, only enough to produce 4,450 cases globally, close parentheses, of his ex-bourbon barrel-aged 10-year-old whiskey and matured them for an additional 12 to 18 months in barrels that formerly held Oloroso Seco Sherry. Indeed, the influences of the sherried Spanish oak slightly tames, enhances, and sweetens the normally robust flavour of Laphroaig, but leaves enough of this best-selling Islay single malt's characteristics to let you know that it is indeed Laphroaig. Bottle price around $82.
I have one experience of a Laphroaig sherry cask finish, and that one experience was not a good one for me. And that was when Laphroaig PX cask was first released. And it felt as if they just matured one of their single malts for, X number of years in bourbon and just slapped on a bit of PX just for good measure. And,
agreed. Yep.
Yeah, and the two didn't really seem to line up. Now, having said that, that particular release carried on, and we have friends in common that swear by it and that think it's good. So maybe it got better. I'm not sure, but that one experience would give me a bit of pause on this one. And you and I talk about this all the time. The Laphroaig 10-year-old cask strength is such a perfect whiskey.
Indeed.
And why fix something that isn't broken? However, I think we need to listen to our advice before about Virginia Distillery Company, and that's a company that
I hate it when you head me off at the pass.
So would I give this as a gift? That's a tough thing. A Laphroaig is something you only give whiskey drinkers that like their smoky whiskeys. And it's a new bottling. So I guess if the person I know loves peated whiskeys and the fact that this is a newer release, I think I would pick this up, potentially. However, I feel as if I'd want to get a sample first.
I think what's interesting here on this price point is, so first of all, this sherry finish 10 is 48% alcohol.
Oh, hold on. Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
Right? Which I loved it when they brought out the quarter cask, and the quarter cask was 48%, right? I love seeing that. So to bring this out at 48% is good. The price point is somewhat similar to the original cask strength. So in purchasing this to gift, you're asking yourself, do I want to pay for the sherry or do I want to pay for the higher strength? And I like what you said a moment ago, which is if you show up with that cask strength 10-year-old for a friend, you know what you're gifting them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They know what they're receiving. This 10-year-old with the sherry finish has actually got me thinking of Kilchoman Sanaig, where that sherry just knocks down the smoke a little bit, softens the smoke, sweetens the smoke. And if you've got somebody who is peat adjacent or peat interested, then I think Sanaig works better than the Macro Bay there in terms of that gifting. For me, I would rather have the Macro Bay rather than the Sanaig because I want that smoke to come out.
Yep.
And I'm thinking similarly here, if you're looking at similar price points between these two Laphroaigs, that original cask strength, you're gifting someone the additional alcohol with the peat running loose. The sherry finish, you're tamping it down a little bit, 48% on the alcohol, but softening out the peat. So a couple of different aspects to think about as you're gifting that to somebody.
Yeah. I think my gut would tell me Laphroaig 10-year-old cask strength. However, if I'm in a let's have a little crazy mix 'em up kind of mood, then I jump at this. The fact that it is 48%, which I think the PX was also 48%. I could be wrong, but I think...
Yeah, I don't recall.
It may be, but I do like that Laphroaig does do the higher ABV for some of these, special editions, with lesser availability to them.
Well, and it's lovely to see a Laphroaig mentioned here as John Campbell ends, 27 years association with the distillery and moves off to the Scottish mainland for some as of yet unnamed new project. But to have his final release make it onto this recommended list, I think is very cool.
I think it's very cool.
And speaks well of John.
No doubt. Now I need to... You know what? I may gift myself a bottle of this just to see what the hubbub is.
How about this? I'll gift you one. You gift me one, and then everybody's happy.
Perfect.
So, without further ado, there's a single malt you've been keeping up your sleeve to this point, and I'm curious to hear what it is, and then I'm curious to see if you're going to ask me one without me being prepared to give you one.
I've had a sample of this one. I haven't purchased the bottle yet, simply because the last time I saw it on a shelf, I simply didn't have enough room in my suitcase back home. But having tasted this, it really captured my attention. It's one of those ones you put in your glass and you do a double take. And it is the Glen Grant 15-year-old, the new batch strength.
Right.
50% alcohol, and it's all first fill bourbon casks. Right? And what's better than that? It's like
Nothing.
75 to $79 for a 15-year-old, 50% alcohol, first fill bourbon Glen Grant.
Oh, that's tidy.
And I don't even have to tell you what it's doing. You know all the things it's doing. Right?
Yeah. Clean, crisp, warm, buttery shortbread.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Oh, I'll be getting a bottle of that. There's no doubt about it. I used to love the Glen Grant 16. Absolutely loved it.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
I was really sad to see it discontinued. It sounds like they've come back with almost the same thing at a higher ABV.
Yeah. It really is a damn fine little whiskey, and it's going to be one of those ones. We always talk about what are the must-haves on your shelf, and I think this one is going to be a must-have.
Yeah, I could see myself adding that without any shadow of a doubt.
And so, Jason,
you're going to like this recommendation because it's one that you've given me.
Okay.
You have me firmly in the Craigellachie 13-year-old camp.
Right?
Squarely.
Right?
Squarely.
It's such a great whiskey.
And in thinking about gifting, in thinking about saying thank you to a host, if you're looking for something that will resonate with a range of palates. It's the Craigellachie 13. You don't have to worry about it missing a palate. And what's the number on it? $55, $60?
About that. Yep.
Brilliant.
46%, you know?
Yeah. That's, since you told me that has to be on my shelf, it is on my shelf. I'm running perilously low on the bottle that is currently on my shelf. There will be a new one behind it. And if anybody this holiday season wants to gift me one or thank me for playing host, I would accept a Craigellachie 13 easily.
Beautiful. I'm glad.
Excellent.
I'm glad my recommendation resonated with you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think we've covered a lot of great whiskies in this episode. And I think there's different price points, there's different flavor profiles, there's different maturations, there's different strengths.
Yeah. This is what I liked about this article. You know, the other ones that we read, they are these elitist articles, you know, these untouchables. And while this article did have some untouchables in there,
we dipped a toe.
It also had very, easy to get, decent price point whiskeys and, some common things like don't overlook the Eagle Rare 10, right? You didn't read it in there, but don't overlook the Glenlivet Caribbean Reserve. It may not be for you and me, but again, back to who are the people that would like Eagle Rare 10-year-old? It may be people who like Glenlivet or vice versa. And you think about, you as a bourbon drinker trying to bring a single malt drinker into your world. This could be a bridge or vice versa, right? So, there's some commonly available bottles that are on this list are regularly available, I should say, that are on this list that I think are well deserved to be on this list.
Yeah, it was a well-curated list. We may have skipped over the $2,300 Woodford Reserve, but go read about that for yourself. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can simply drop us an email at questions@onenationunderwhiskey.com. No E in whiskey. If you feel like it, you can drop a note to info@singlecasknation.com. We see every email that comes in there. We're on the doorstep, as we said in the introduction, of holiday season, travel season, people season, and from Joshua and myself and our families to yours, enjoy a wonderful and safe holiday season. And we'll be back in December with another episode, Joshua.
I feel like I entered a Lifetime Channel original movie just then. Thank you, Jason.
From our hearts to yours. Two chins.
Two chins indeed. Stop talking. I got no strings to hold me up. Sorry, go ahead.
Cut. I'm trying to make my sound wave spell out a C and then a U and then a T. But it's only giving me a C, a U, an N, and a T. And I don't know why that's happening.